The Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas is already home to roughly 220 data centers. But the mother of all data centers is now up for review. And some in the Lone Star State are questioning what's in it for the taxpayers. Another colossal AI data center is headed to Texas. The Houston news outlet Ron reports that developers could soon break ground on a $2 billion data center on a 107-acre site in northern Fort Worth. The sheer scale of the campus dwarfs its projected employment numbers of just 37 souls. This has become a growing point of contention as cities across Texas court data centers with lucrative tax breaks for projects that employ so few Texans. Details of the project, registered on December 16th with the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration, set a start date of January 26, 2026, and a completion date of June 26, 2027. Estimated cost of the initial construction phase at the site is listed at $280 million. The initial phase calls for a two-story data center spanning approximately 251,000 square feet. The global infrastructure firm ACS Group has submitted an application for a preliminary grading permit to the city. Phase 1 of the development is targeted for completion by the end of 2031, and Phase 2 by the end of 2034. That's according to an April 2025 presentation from the city's Economic Development Department. The site plan for the project estimates a 5-building campus with a disclaimer that the total number of buildings is subject to change. Earlier this spring, the Fort Worth City Council approved a tax incentive. There was an agreement with ACS Group that would provide property tax abatements for up to 10 years. Under the deal, the city would rebate 35% of the incremental value of business personal property after Phase 1 and 70% after Phase 2. In exchange, ACS committed to a total investment of $481.6 million in real property improvements, nearly $1.7 billion in business personal property, and the creation of 37 jobs, with a minimum average annual salary of $150,000 by the end of 2034. Well, critics have warned of the impact that the massive data centers will have on electricity and water usage. Nationwide, the development of these centers, well, it has sparked major concern from nearby residents related to property devaluation. And then some are concerned about the health consequences, the noise, and more. Matthew Carter, he's Senior Vice President for Digital Infrastructure with ACS, and he said the company is aiming to maintain a gap between the campus and residential areas, to thus minimize potential noise, adding that the company's design produces less noise than most data centers. Carter also said the center would reduce water usage to the absolute minimum, whatever that means. Dallas-Fort Worth is already home to roughly 220 data centers, which account for more than half of the state's total. That's according to Data Center Map. Would you like to gain access to 36 years of Christian Worldview programming, news and information, all my books, ebooks, documentaries, and more? Worldviewtube.com/vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Understand the times, where we've been and where we're going. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Ukrainian President Zelensky has agreed to hold elections if a ceasefire can be achieved in his country's war with Russia. But here's where it gets weird. Citizens of eastern Ukraine, meaning those living in the Donbas region, are supportive of Russia and will not be allowed to vote in the planned elections. This creates a rather bizarre official hypocrisy within the Zelensky regime. The official position of Zelensky is that eastern Ukraine will never be accepted as a part of the Russian Federation. Yet the citizens of this region are not voting members of the Ukrainian nation either. Are they to be a people with no national rights, left in limbo by the warring factions on either side? Zelensky, well, he has the full support of the EU leadership for this travesty of, I think, injustice. He openly says his government will never recognize eastern Ukraine as part of the Russian Federation. And yet, the same region, which is roughly 20% of Ukraine, will not be permitted to participate in his controlled election. The conservative treehouse notes, quote, essentially, any Ukraine resident who does not support Zelensky will not be permitted to vote in any election, if any election is ever permitted, end quote. This is, of course, shaping up to be a sham election, I think, orchestrated by a dictator well-versed in, I think, running scams. And yet, he continues to receive billions of dollars from American taxpayers, along with weapons from our dwindling U.S. stockpile. That's perhaps the biggest scam of all. By sending Ukraine money we don't have and weapons we can't spare, well, we're making our country less safe. So whatever happened to America first? Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche on Sunday defended the Department of Justice and their decision to release just a fraction of the Jeffrey Epstein files by the congressionally mandated deadline. He defended the DOJ's refusal to comply as necessary to protect survivors of sexual abuse by the disgraced financier. According to an Associated Press report, Blanche, he pledged that the Trump administration eventually would meet its obligation required by law. But he stressed that the department was obligated to act with caution as it goes about making public thousands of documents that can include sensitive information. 90% of what was released by the Justice Department on Friday was blacked out, including entire pages in sequence. Other key files were missing altogether, according to reports. Friday's partial release of Epstein files, well, it has led to a new round of criticism from those in both parties who have accused the Trump administration of waging a cover-up. Representative Thomas Massie, Republican, he is calling for Attorney General Pam Bondi to be brought up on contempt charges. Blanche called that pushback disingenuous. He told NBC's Meet the Press, quote, the reason why we are still reviewing documents and still continuing our process is simply to protect victims. So the same individuals that are out there complaining about the lack of documents that were produced on Friday are the same individuals who apparently don't want us to protect the victims, end quote. Some of the most consequential records expected about Epstein were nowhere to be found in the most recent file dump. Where, for instance, were the FBI interviews with survivors? And what about the internal Justice Department memos examining charging decisions? Those records, well, I think they could help explain how investigators viewed the case and why Epstein was allowed in 2008 to plead guilty to a relatively minor state-level prostitution charge. Trump, he tried for months to keep the records sealed, though he has not been accused of wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. President Trump has argued there is nothing to see in the files and that the public should focus on other issues. He dismissed the entire affair as a Democratic hoax. And he tried to repackage the story as a partisan issue that fits neatly into the left-wing Democrat-Republican paradigm. But here's the problem. Epstein doesn't fit so neatly into that package. Apparently, he played both sides of the aisle, and he appears to have operated above the Republican-Democrat divide. He was apparently comfortable meeting with Bill Clinton as he was Steve Bannon. He may have had different reasons for meeting with different people. And by keeping 90% of his files hidden, well, it leaves an array of suspicion over the heads of everyone that he had contact with. There is a way to protect victims and still be transparent. And I think that's what people are expecting from this administration. What are your thoughts?